Hola, good morning, good evening for all of you listening across the globe, and welcome to another edition of our inService podcast at Service Council. My name is Gerardo Pelayo. I'm the Vice President of Research and Advisory at Service Council, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. The title is Resilient Spare Parts Planning for Today's Challenges. And I'm flattered that I'm outnumbered today. Have Chad Hawkinson and Franco Roversi from Baxter Planning joining in the conversation, and it's going to be a very fun and exciting one. I'm sure we'll get to know them in a little bit. But before I do that, let me introduce the topic because it's been very frequent in my conversations as of late with the service community, and part of that is uncertainty is an implicit element of the service supply chain. But I've seen a shift happening more and more as how to start thinking about the service supply chain and service parts, not just as something that drives efficiency and try to make that silo that we've been gotten used to seeing service parts for all the wrong reasons in the news cycles. How to change that dynamic and go from making it a very strong silo and instead making it a key element of the service strategy for organizations. So it's a very different role, and that gets into how do we think about the data and the tools and the connection to people. So we're going to be touching on all of that and how that allows for that uncertainty to be mitigated, better managed, achieve that resiliency outcomes as we go along. And right before I get into the conversation with our guests, a little bit of housekeeping. So our LinkedIn audience, those of you who are familiar, you know that we like the fact that you're here and listening and learning, but we also very much enjoy when you're a participating audience. You have the option to comment as we go along. Chad and Franco have been kind and brave enough to think on their feet as the comments come along. So you can support, challenge any one of the comments that we have as part of the conversation. And a reminder that today's session, it is recorded, it is being streamed in all the different channels anywhere that you enjoy listening to your podcast the most. It's going to be available shortly after so that you can revisit many of the nuggets that I'm sure we'll get into. So with no further ado, I'm very happy to welcome Chad and Franco. I've had the pleasure of starting to get to know you as we got into the planning and we talk about this passion topic of all of us. But if you could provide an introduction of yourself, what is your role at Baxter Planning? So Chad, I'll start with you.
Yeah, great. Nice to meet everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Chad Hawkinson. I work at Baxter Planning, and I lead our innovation and product teams, and had a long career in the software world, primarily in the manufacturing and supply chain space, and so excited to be here with you today.
Great. Welcome, Chad. And Franco, same thing. Can you provide a little bit of your background?
Sure. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Gerardo, for the invitation. And yeah, I'm a solutions engineer at Baxter Planning. Have been for the last 7 years with this company. And before this, I have been involved in different areas of supply chain during retail, optimization and implementation of TMS and WMS systems, and finally in the service supply chain domain, which is I feel very passionate about. So thank you for having us.
Good. Welcome as well. And I'm biased, so I'm a service part supply chain nerd. And Baxter Planning is a household name within the space. But for those of you who are perhaps less familiar getting into the service parts space, would either of you mind elaborating a little bit of what is it that Baxter Planning does, and especially how do you engage with service organizations? What does that relationship look like?
Yeah, great. I'd be happy to. So Baxter Planning really focuses on the service supply chain. So enabling our customers, large manufacturers, to ensure that they are effectively managing their spare parts process, making sure they're stocking the right spare parts, delivering the right spare parts, and ultimately ensuring that they're satisfying their customers with the highest service level possible. So that's kind of the world we play in: spare parts management, planning, execution, resolution of critical customer problems. Franco, anything you'd add?
No, I think you cover everything. We always also, apart from helping them achieve their objective, try to keep a close relationship with them and build long-term relationships, close relationships.
Good. And I actually will double click a little bit on that, because at the beginning of the year, John Carroll, who's the CEO and founder of Service Council, and myself, we had a podcast where we talked about our top 10 predictions for 2025. And one of those predictions had to do with the shifting focus from manufacturing to service, as we see manufacturing starting to slow down, product returns on the retail side getting higher and higher, and the margins in service parts, the long tail, start to become more appealing. And we see not only the focus changing, but also many of the professionals who used to be on the forward side of the supply chain now switching over to the service space, and that can create some disruption. So you said you're focused on the service supply chain. What is unique about this, Chad? What would you tell our audience on that?
Yeah, I think we focus on the service world because it is unique. You know, in the forward supply chain, where there's lots of focus, it has its own unique set of complications and challenges, and there's some really good software out there that will help you manage it. But when you think about the service supply chain, it's just different. I mean, some examples: demand. So demand on the forward supply chain, driven through sales, marketing, macroeconomic conditions, tends to be larger quantities, tends to be finite periods of time when you're manufacturing something. But on the service supply chain side, you're really trying to solve failures. And those failures can happen at any time, in any place, wherever your customers are. So volumes are lower. They can happen for many years. So we have customers are maintaining products for decades. And so they can be maintained for a very long period of time. You've got complex distribution networks, so sometimes you got to get spare parts to where they are needed within 2 hours, within 4 hours, depending on your customer SLAs. You've got inventory that lives in distribution centers and field stocking locations like the Ford supply chain, but you also have the inventory that's managed on technician vehicles and places like that. So thinking through all those, it's just a very different world. It's got its own complications and challenges, and it demands its own focus.
Yeah, I have to agree. And that proliferation of assets. We were at Manitowoc. It's a crane manufacturer last month, talking about service parts, and one of the trends that we were seeing there was moving from defense to offense. But you talked about that long tail and how for how long assets are served. Manitowoc mentioned that some of their cranes, they were built and delivered over 50 years ago, and they still have to have the inventory available to support them, right? Because they might have even a 60, 70-year-old service life cycle. So the complexities, they're just astounding for somebody that is new to the space, and it does require a different way of thinking and of leveraging the possibilities that we hear about every day. And we'll get into some of that AI and other comments on that.
Yeah, just a point. We actually have some
Yes.
elevator manufacturers as customers, and they actually are maintaining some elevators that are over 100 years old. So gives you an idea of how long some of these services can take place.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And
just wanted
did you
to
have
add
a comment, Franco?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that some of also the complexities comparing the forward supply chain versus the service supply chain is the inventory strategy model that you follow. So in some cases you can use it just in time, but in the service supply chain industry, it's not really applicable. We just plan in just in case, which makes the process of building the plan a bit more complex, a bit more difficult. You have to consider many different parameters, and also makes the final plan a bit more expensive to execute because you're aiming to higher stock levels, again, just in case a failure occurrence in the future. So I think just wanted to highlight that point.
Yeah, no, great point. And in fact, at the top of the podcast, I mentioned that the focus is increasing on this, but you don't need to believe me. We can go to the data, and very refreshingly, in our 2025 service leaders agenda, research we just presented less than a month ago, service parts management ranked third as the critical elements where performance needs to improve in 2025 for organizations to achieve their strategic objectives. And to me, that is the key, that it is not as a silo, but becoming that key lever. It was, in fact, number 2 for those that were prioritizing their financial objectives. And that is very telling. Further, if we do one more click on that, we just wrapped up our service state of service supply chain survey only last week, I believe, in fact. And the number 1 focus area for supply chain leaders was parts procurement and supplier management. So I'll keep that as a teaser. And I mean, you talk to a bunch of customers, of prospects. As you're having these conversations, Chad, perhaps what are some of the key trends that you're seeing in the market as you talk throughout across verticals?
Yeah, thank you. We've seen very much the same thing, right? More and more companies are recognizing that their services business can be a strategic enabler of their company's profit, revenue. In fact, a lot of companies now are making more profit from their services business than from the sale of their original equipment. And so you're seeing a lot more emphasis on the services business. And as you emphasize the services business more, you see a lot more of the dependence on spare parts, right? Because warranty, service contracts that you have around your equipment all require spare parts at some point to be able to address what they're needing. And so companies spend a lot of money on spare parts, and their ability to deliver on customers' expectations are driven by spare parts. And so we're seeing a lot of drive towards, no longer treating spare parts as just kind of a cost and a cost center, but more of a strategic enabler for what they're trying to achieve in their broader service organization. So we certainly see that. The second thing that I would say, you mentioned financial objectives. The big story until recently was inflation. Last year was a huge year in inflation for spare parts. We actually measure lots of different metrics across our customers, and we saw inflation rates over 10% on average across industries last year. And so everything got a lot more expensive. So last year was a big year for inventory reductions, inventory optimization, people trying to get a lot more lean in order to drive down those costs. Interestingly, coming into 2025, we actually saw a bit of a respite. It's gone in the other direction. Costs have actually come down a little bit, still higher than a year ago, about 6% higher from where they were, but come down a little bit. So companies have been using that as an opportunity to rebuild some of their inventories and buffers. We see some of that in advance of tariffs. So some companies trying to get ahead of tariffs by building up some inventories beforehand. But I think that gets us to the biggest trend we're seeing, and it's all really our customers want to talk about right now is tariffs, what to do about them, how to understand the impact, and how to mitigate the most impactful aspects of tariffs to their business. So that's what we're seeing across our customers today.
And that's very insightful, and there's a lot to unpack there. We'll talk about tariffs in a little bit. It's definitely an elephant in the room conversation right now. But I also wanted to pop up one key observation from Lance Johnson. And by the way, he's one of the first professionals who introduced me into this pendulum that you were talking about, from now we really care about service level, and now we really care about minimizing costs, and it goes back and forth. And that's why resiliency becomes so critical. And he makes this comment of how just in case is such a different concept for those that are less familiar with the service space coming from manufacturing, because we're used to just in time, right? As mentioned. And And sometimes the mindset is, well, I cannot afford to have that much inventory. But the question that gets left out is, can you afford not to have that inventory? And now the asset is not working, and all that implies, from the service contracts to just the operation that happens at the other end, which in many industries it's quantified in millions of dollars for a very short time spans. Even more so, we have a lot of members in the medical and healthcare space. It's not just about the dollars; it's people's lives that are impacted when a critical asset in the
Sure.
healthcare sector, for example, is not available. So, great point from Lance, and I insist, one of my key mentors in this space. So glad that you're listening and participating. And before we get into into tariffs, you gave us a very good introduction at the general trends. But Franco, I'll point this towards you. Can you share some of the specific use cases that you're coming across on this, as we hear about the large trends? How are organizations efficiently adapting to these changing priorities and that pendulum from cost minimization and service level maximization?
Yeah, of course. So, like you said, the focus has been always in trying to deliver the highest service level with the most minimum or most effective cost possible, right? So when we think about cost, the first thing that comes to mind is optimization, right? And there are different areas in the service supply chain that we can aim that optimization to. One of them being the entire network, the logistic network, where you have your install base. Other ones, it can be your inventory levels, how much you're keeping in stock, the overall plan or planning strategy. So what we have been doing with our customer is engaging in consulting projects where we will dedicate to specifically to those practice areas. We will dedicate time to analyze, evaluate, and then make suggestions. And I think I can call out some great success stories where we have find some very valuable insights and very valuable suggestions for our customers. So from the point of view of analyzing and trying to optimize a network, one of our capabilities is to uncover opportunities to shut down sites. Maybe in a network you have too many sites that perhaps you don't need to fulfill or to achieve the same service level. When we do those recommendations, those really have an impact, economical impact. So you're minimizing cost and still keeping the service level. One of these success stories from one of our customers is after doing all this consultant project, we were able to report that in the EMEA region, they were able to get rid or shut down 50 of their FSLs. That's pretty significant right there. And when you highlight that these sites are owned by a 3PL, the story becomes even better, right? So when they tell this to their executive, it makes things really, really happy to everyone. Also, we have identified the excess level from one of our new customers. As soon as they go live, we have capabilities to measure the level of inventory and how much of that is needed in the network and how much of that is just excess that is not going to be needed in the next 4 or 5 or more years. Some cases have come up to almost 20% of their excess. And also when you have capabilities to inform of those savings opportunities, that is huge. And again, you can get rid of that much inventory, still keeping your service level. Our optimization engine as well is aiming to keep an inventory the most cost-effective level. And some of these decisions are what I call binary decisions. When your monthly forecast is too small, the decision is either yes or no, stock or not. That makes the decision, I will able to deliver the service or I will fall in a stock out and maybe get an escalation. So that type of decision, having a smart enough optimization engine, you remove that from your planning teams. So we have seen great benefits from having this engine in place or from the customers that use it. because it might suggest sometimes not keeping the part in stock, because it's not sure if you're going to need it in 1 year, 1 year and a half, or even 2 years. So sometimes the best plan is not to keep the part. Again, cost reduction there. And the last one is the increases in savings from all the repair flow that we have been seeing across the customers. Like Chad suggested, service is at times 50% of the total revenue from our customers, and the spare parts management has been getting a lot of focus, and specifically the repair operations. In the case where repair is possible and they are able to reutilize those assets, that is also something that we are really strong. And after suggesting this kind of change in the supply type, we also have seen great benefits. So I would say those are the trends and success stories that I have been able to identify recently.
Yeah, that's very comprehensive, and actually you triggered multiple thoughts that I just want to emphasize on. First, you talked about the importance of a smart engine, and one of the examples to me in which we can say, well, why do we need it to be smart, and what do we mean by that? Is this zeros and ones in the demand. It's easier, going back to the manufacturing example, to make a forecast when you have hundreds of data points. But when you have demand instances that happen once a month, once a year, and even longer periods, doing a forecast based on demand history becomes pretty much irrelevant, and you have to think about a different way. And that's one of the examples of what does it mean to be smart. The other second point is, as you talked about, that pendulum of efficiency and service level, making the initial decision of, hey, let's close down these sites, let's buy more inventory, that perhaps is the least complicated element. And I'll say why, because it is the other underlying questions that I bet are part of your conversation and your interaction with the clients of, by reducing these sites, you still maintain some of the robustness. If circumstances change in the future, and we know they're going to change, we just don't know exactly when, but how can you recover? How can you adapt your strategy? And that's where network optimization becomes so important. Where can you get a lot of bang for from an efficiency perspective, for instance, without losing too much flexibility? And asking those questions, it's a show of understanding what the service is like. And the last point, you talked about revenues and the connection to spare parts. In that service leaders agenda research, another of the things that we asked for is, how are your targets changing for the year? And there was very interesting correlation that those that are focusing on spare parts management, 80% of them are also increasing their targets around margins for service in the coming year. For those that are not focusing on service parts, we still see a trend, but it's less than 55%. So very close correlation between the margins that I can achieve in my overall service offering and how the role that service parts plays within that. And I spoke about John Carroll, our CEO, earlier, and he must have his ears must have been ringing. He actually shared a very interesting perspective from what we as well are hearing from the community. And you see tariff mitigation, the sourcing strategies, harvesting, and the connection to sustainability, circularity approaches, these being frequent topics. And I want to pick on the first two in particular. As what is it that you've been hearing from customers around the right strategy to rely on as tariffs are continuing to drive uncertainty? It's not just the realization, but it's the uncertainty of what's going to happen next. And in particular, it was interesting to me that in that state of service supply chain research, coordinating the flow of different supply sources. Think of new buys and harvested, as John mentions, and those that are you repair and you refurbish. Managing that at scale becomes really, really hard. Interoperability is a challenge. Optimization takes on a whole different dimension. And perhaps tariffs is one of those things that now forces our hand to pay closer attention and become more effective at managing this. So Chad, I'll point this to you. How are you and your customers thinking about tariffs and the impact that this might have on their operations?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, John, for your comments. Totally agree there. I would say we're having daily conversations with our customers and working hand in hand with tariff situations. I think every customer right now is very much focused on how to mitigate tariffs. I would say there are three phases that customers are working through to understand tariffs. The first one is understanding. I think a lot of our customers, we actually ran a webcast last week and did a poll, and still about 2/3 of customers still trying to figure out what the impact of tariffs are to their business. So that's the first step. And we're seeing some companies that are saying, hey, I'm going to halt all of my replenishment activity while we figure this out. So people are really trying to understand. But now we're starting to see companies kind of graduate from understanding the impact now into what do we do about it. And some of the biggest strategies that we're seeing is shifting replenishment locations outside of the U.S. One of the things that we see a lot with our customers is that we get a lot of parts imported from high tariff countries into the United States, for example, but then get re-exported out to other countries in Latin America, Canada, Europe, even Asia Pacific. And so identifying those and then rerouting those is a big focus right now, is how do we can avoid the United States for some of those parts that don't end up being consumed in the United States. So that's certainly a big one. We're also seeing customers focused on installed base, where their customers are and where they can afford to take some service level hits to try to reduce some of their inventory position, inventory expense. Can they burn down inventories and safety stocks and delay orders? Because I think there's this view that maybe this is just a temporary thing, that it's all going to get negotiated away in the next 6 months. So how do we get through that kind of 6-month pain? But I think there's also companies starting to think about the longer term. And I think that's to your point, which is, do I need to reshore some of these activities? Do I need to change my supply base so that I have more local suppliers? Do I need to think about repair and harvesting more effectively to help me manage this? So those are some of the key areas that we see and are working with our customers to help them execute.
Yeah, good. And it's interesting how many of these challenges they're not necessarily new, but the tools that we have to work around these challenges, from the data, and definitely artificial intelligence is one of those elephants in the room. But from the positive side also comes into the conversation. So I'd like to get your perspective on where does AI, artificial intelligence, play into this whole service parts conversation, and perhaps to inspire that and see if there's a connection. I thought this comment from Lance Johnson was also very, very timely, where that zeros and ones in the demand, as many as 70% of your service parts business falling within that category. So talked about smart engines, talked about artificial intelligence as a tool, and this balancing that act between efficiency and service levels. Where does AI play in all of this?
Yeah, I think Lance actually is a great segue to that point, where I think artificial intelligence has a big role in spare parts planning. When you think about what spare parts planning, we're trying to predict the future. That's what we do. And artificial intelligence has shown that it can be really good at prediction. And so when we think about demand and forecasting demand in the complicated world of service parts, statistical approaches, which are kind of the way we've traditionally done these types of things, work pretty well when you understand demand and it's pretty stable and your planning horizons are pretty short. But when you don't have a good feel for demand, or when you don't have the luxury of really having a stable demand, like in new product introductions or last time buys, that's an area where artificial intelligence can really help you make better, more confident, more accurate decisions. And so we recently have created a new product that allows our customers to use artificial intelligence to predict things like new product introduction, demand, and last time buy. You think about new product introduction, sell some products. I don't know how many I'm going to sell. I don't know how many are going to fail, but I've got to get some inventory out there to be able to support those early failures, or I'm going to have customers who are unhappy with my brand new product, and that's going to damage my future sales. So using artificial intelligence to help around some of those is some of those key decisions where we've seen a lot of value. Predicting ETAs, estimated time of arrivals, around spare parts. Are they going to get to where they need to go on time? The earlier you can predict problems, the more options you have to solve them before they become customer problems. So actually next week, we're releasing a new product that helps you predict those estimated time of arrivals much more quickly. And then finally, I think similar to every other industry, productivity is an area of benefit to artificial intelligence around spare parts planning, planners, making them more proficient, more effective, being able to solve problems more quickly. That's where I think we see some benefits. So those three areas: predicting demand, predicting estimated time of arrivals, and helping planners become a lot more productive, I think is where we've seen the early returns from artificial intelligence.
Yeah, no, that's a great summary. And Franco, I want to welcome you back into the conversation as well. See if you have any additional use cases that you'd like to share with the audience. And for some inspiration, one of the things that I also find important in the conversation is adoption, right? We heard there's this appetite for more advanced applications, but we also hear from a third of service supply chain leaders that the inability to operationalize those AI ML capabilities to support service force planning is something that they are really struggling with. And it is translated into the type of outcomes that organizations are seeing from artificial intelligence as well. 59% of service leaders say they are already observing some kind of impact. Less than 10% of that is happening specifically on service parts management from our latest survey on the state of artificial intelligence and service technology. So any incremental use cases, specific instances that you'd like to share of how AI is solving some of these specific problems, Franco?
Yeah, sure. So I think to be able to adapt these AI capabilities and the benefits they can bring to organization, first of all, needs to be the proper layout to adapt to this and be prepared to bring it. In terms of data, in terms of talent, and in terms of mindset. So data, we often find that data is very fragmented about the suppliers, about the demand occurrences, events, about service disruptions. How many times have you captured that and integrated to a centralized data, right? So I think that is fundamental to being able to make use of these new advanced capabilities. Also, the talent, not having the best data scientists, the best planners, etc., but the cross functionality between these teams, between these different organizations, that is also something that needs to happen. I remember I was in a war room together with field engineer or field technicians. We had data scientists and data analysts and the planners, and having that frontline input with the different criteria of knowledge and the planners from the operational side really turn those pieces of data into really actionable and useful items, right? And then finally, a mindset of experimentation and iteration, right? You need to get the basics first before trying to bring these advanced capabilities or advanced tools. And I think this needs to be treated as a part of your strategy, part of your day-to-day and every year task, and not only as an IT project that it was done and that's it. It needs to be. It cannot be a static thing. the benefits that we see, I think Chad mentioned this, the predictions on NPI and LTV that we can gain from this insight, from these functionalities are remarkable. Like the accuracy that you can the accuracy that you can add to this new build forecast based on these capabilities is amazing. And I think with the new tariff environment, NPI and LTV specifically are going to be are need to be rethought in the way how your organizations are planning towards those.
Yeah, that's a good reflection, because we often get the question of how little is too little, or how much do I really need in terms of data and technology and sophistication and the talent within the organization. So all the things that you talked about, I think, are key pre-requirements in order to take advantage of this. Last year's survey, it hurt a little to see that 63% of respondents said that they struggle to predict demand with anything other than historical data, right? And this was a conversation back a couple of lives ago when I did my PhD and had a full set of hair, and as I said, it hurts that we're still to a large extent stuck in that. So, I mean, there's a lot of good noise that you both shared through this conversation. To wrap us up, from across the conversations that you have and the capabilities that you're aware of, are there any best practices, systematic gaps, gotcha moments from implementations that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up today? Chad, why don't I start with you?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things, maybe to pick up on Franco's comments. So first off, I think don't underestimate the benefits you can get from focusing on your spare parts. We have saved our customers literally billions of dollars in inventory savings by being able to focus on optimizing your spare parts while also increasing their service levels. So we've kind of broken that connection between, well, if you want to have higher service levels and meet your customers' needs, you need more inventory. We actually, from a lot of our customers, found it's not the case. You can actually do a better job with a lower inventory level. And so don't underestimate the benefits is I think one of the key things. And second, don't be afraid to start. I think it's, to your point, how much data is enough? Well, typically it's a very small amount of data that we can get very quickly to get running, get initial results that you can then build on. And so I think those are the two key lessons that I would really impress upon folks is don't underestimate the benefits that you can receive by really putting a focus on your spare parts. And then second, don't be afraid to start because your data might not be perfect or in the right place. I think even with a little bit of data, you can get a lot of value out of the systems.
Great. Franco, any last comments from you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a bit redundant with mixing what Chad and you said. So the spare parts management needs to stop being treated as an afterthought after you make the sale, after your install base is out in the field. It needs to bring forward the moment that you start planning for that, because we know the portion of or proportion of revenue that is bringing. And with the data that is being captured, starts with the basic. You mentioned IoT, and this is something that companies are yet starting to use, and it needs some treatment, right? You need to capture the data, you need to analyze it, clean it, integrate it with existing systems, so then you can interpret that data. And that's going to allow organizations moving away from that pure based on historic events or historic consumption forecasting, and bring more valuable data that you can mix and get more insightful forecasting. Also, I think something that is very important and that I have seen in existing customers is that the link between service organization goals and strategy needs to be connected to higher levels of the business and the overall corporate objective. So you need to have different teams, different organizations working and knowing what are the goals, working together and make that a higher priority, not only for the service organization, but bring that to a higher corporate aim.
Yeah, no, a lot of good points, and I love how everything you mentioned, it triggers additional thoughts and conversation on my end. Just to wrap up, I'll say a couple of mine, and Lance was emphasizing this potential value in AI and predicting the time of arrival. In the latest conversations I've been in, AI, we see most of the applications leaning towards the efficiency side and how to drive costs down. Part of the returns is also how can AI be leveraged to drive growth and revenue, and service parts is a great use case for that. You also talked about the returns specifically from service parts, and yes, there's a service level, there's the direct costs, but one of the larger trends in service that we see at Service Council is a talent shortage and the retention crisis and all this. And when you look, when you see that 40% of service supply chain leaders are not actively measuring how much first and fix is being affected by service parts availability, that among those who are, close to a third of them have more than 40% of their first and fix misses being because of service parts issues. Now you start seeing the implications on talent, on mental health, on the experience of your frontline. So there's a lot to lose, a lot to gain, depending on how effective you are at managing service parts in the other elements of your service business. So we're, as I said, this is a topic that is just growing in momentum. It's going to be a key topic in this year's Smarter Service Executive Symposium when we get together in Chicago. It's 400 plus practitioners, very exciting 2.5 days, really inviting the audience. And the theme, very much like today, is going to be about harnessing the humanity and technology for next-gen service. So all the examples that you've shared, I believe, speak to that. Thank you for spending your time with us. Before I let you go, you've shared so much from a professional perspective and your expertise. It would be great to know a little bit about Chad and Franco, the individuals. So Franco, I'll start with you. Any passion project, anything about you that you'd like to share with our audience?
Sure. Thank you, Gerardo. And in general, very, very average person. I love to spend time with family and friends over dinner and drinks. I love to do any kind of outdoor activity. If it's sports, better. And finally, I find myself very passionate about woodworking. So yeah, I try to spend some of my spare time trying to come up with something creative around wood.
Nice. Talking about mental stress, that's something that probably helps. Chad, what about you?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for the opportunity. This is really great conversation. Really appreciate you asking us to join. I've got 3 teenage kids, one soon to leave the house, and so I just want to spend as much time as I can with them over the summer when they're all off, still here in the house. And so we've got some fun trips planned. If anybody's going to be in Croatia and Turkey, we're headed there this summer, so excited to get there. But that's where I'm really looking forward to spending some time. How about you?
Nice. Hope you have a great time. So right now I have a 4-month-old, and that's just become like the center of my life. It's very hard to have a conversation that doesn't involve him, regardless of who I'm talking to. So I'm probably a little bit obnoxious about it, but I'm having time in my life on that.
Awesome.
Thank you for asking.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you both, and thank you for joining us. It's been a very energizing, very insightful conversation. A reminder to our audience, today's session was recorded. It's going to be available across all the media and places where you normally listen to podcasts. Thank you for participating, and see you in the next time.